I don't want no oil a-spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus. Good evening, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my fantastic co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together, Rebecca and I are going to give you an hour of wonderful, informative radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and family and coworkers, and all your pets and all the wild critters that your pets like to chase, and all the wild critters that have never seen pets, and basically everybody and everything, because
They're evil, Joe. They're evil because they stare but don't bark or speak.
the wild critters.
Yeah, woodchucks and squirrels and cats. That's how you can tell that other creatures are. The pigs do this too. They just look at you.
I see. Is this Tashi's?
It is.
Your pet
Yes.
Tashi's
Yeah.
Perspective on these things? Yeah. Okay.
Basically,
All right, I understand.
it's very rude.
So we have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to chat for just another 10 minutes or so. Then we have a guest calling in, our good friend Kristen Buskirk, organic farmer extraordinaire, and she's going to talk to us about organic farming and how this season went. And then we'll hear from our wonderful advertisers and patrons, to whom we are eternally grateful. And then it's Rebecca. Your turn at the mic. What do you have for us this week?
I will be talking about sesame.
Sesame?
Yes.
Okay.
Going to shed some light on the situation.
We're open to that.
Okay.
Sesame. Okay. And then it's ecological news. And this week we have a nice mix of good and bad news. We'll see what happens when we get to that part. And hopefully at some point we'll hear from you at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. So, yesterday was quite a big day, of course, for me. I actually went to the No Kings protest down there in Bowling Green, Ohio, and it was a massive thing all over the country, big towns and little towns. Apparently 7 million people participated, and that was just wild. It was another really nice protest, at least in Bowling Green. It was, and from what I can tell, all around the country, it was something that had all people of all different ages, and there were all kinds of signs. And I had my sign, which is the anti-global warming sign, which I picked up from actually salvaged from a trash can in Washington, D.C. It shows the globe sitting at a table and like a coffee house. They've got a cup of coffee and there's flames everywhere, and it says, "This is not fine." It's really
indeed,
nice.
it is not.
No, it is not fine. And so, people had all kinds of issues and so forth, but and the Raging Grannies were there. That was a cool bunch of people having some really nice protest songs, and there was a guy in a tricorner hat on a Segway with an upside down American flag who was going up and down the road. It was, and of course there were lots of the inflatable animals. We saw pigs, and giraffes, and dinosaurs, and it was very colorful. Yeah, it was just lots and lots of fun. And the way that this connects, not a lot of the signs directly connected to the environment. Okay, a lot of them are talking more social issues, but this is what people who, when autocracies come in, when authoritarians take over governments, they inevitably put into place policies that damage the environment because it increases their wealth and power to just ignore ecological and environmental effects and just, build their big monuments wherever they want to. Trump has skipped ahead to the monument stage of autocracy. I mean, it took Erdogan like 10 years before he was ready to start just
memorialize himself
things.
Yes.
And Trump, he doesn't even have full authoritarian control yet, and he's already he wants to build a big arch. I don't know why. He's just got this fixation on arches. He wants to build a big arch on the mall, and of course his big ballroom and all that. But the main damage he's doing, one of the main ways he's hurting Americans is by putting in place anti-environmental policies that are going to cause people a lot of trouble going into the future.
You know what they say, under a good pharaoh, the Nile gains on the desert, and under a bad pharaoh, or the desert gains on the Nile. And the catch is they're all bad pharaohs.
Yeah.
Almost all.
Yeah. So it was great. I was happy to be there. And another thing that happened this past week, of course, was, one of the things that was going on was that it was super hot. I don't know if you noticed that yesterday, but it's
very sticky.
It was 80 degrees in October, and I was looking at some meteorologists' broadcasts, and they were just kind of flabbergasted, saying, "Well, it really shouldn't be 80 degrees this late in October." And of course, today in Toledo, we have some pretty massive storms going on. Yeah, which is one reason we had a little drama about whether we were going to make it to the studio on time, because I-75 north of the Rossford exit is closed because it was a big accident. And I think that accident was probably, the storm may have contributed to that
Northwest
accident.
Ohioans do not remember. It's invariably someone has got to clog up the freeways whenever it rains, because apparently our lessons from having driven last time it was raining do not carry over to the next rainfall.
Well, to be fair, it's been a long time.
Yeah,
okay?
It has. Yeah, no wonder they forgot.
Yeah, we've had quite a drought, and this rain won't break the drought. It'll improve things, but we're still going to be way below where we should be. But the nature of this rain, I had trouble actually driving in. At some point, the van, even the Wonder van, which weighs like 5,000 pounds, wanted to fishtail because there was so much water on the road because it was raining so hard. And that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of storm you get with global warming. You get the long periods of drought, and then when it does finally rain, it's deluges. And there's deluges going on all over the planet right now. Pakistan is kind of underwater, and I don't know if you've seen.
Was it Turkey or some places? Oh, Alaska.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to mention.
Yeah,
Alaska.
like the coastal towns that people, if you survived just because you got on your roof.
Right. Yeah, over 1,000 people had to be evacuated because literally their entire settlement, their entire village was so inundated that houses were floating off of their foundations and just kind of spinning around in the current. And and so they were climbing up on their roofs and getting hauled off by helicopters.
Speaking of drama.
Yeah. So So it is essential, it is vital that we stop these anti-environmental policies. And we have, this president who just a few weeks ago got up on the world stage and told the world that global warming is a hoax. He said this to a global warming world. He said this to the leaders of countries that are firsthand experiencing the effects of global warming. And he's basically telling him, it's all.
I remember what it was. It was Kiribati. That's the first country that is scheduled to go completely underwater and have to shut down. I think they were talking about like trying to get together, like dissolve the treasury and give it to people so they can start over in Australia.
Right. Yeah. Which is, terrible tragedy. They've inhabited those islands for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
And now they have to abandon their homeland, and they're not alone, and
they're now shoals. They're not really islands anymore. Part of the off and on they're islands.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I now have like a little stock of pictures that you see people will post on Facebook or post on social media. They'll post those pictures of like a Plymouth Rock that's not underwater, and they'll say, "Look at this! There's been no sea level rise, 250 years." And so now whenever I see one of those, I just take one of the pictures of like coastal towns that have been completely
right
underwater, and I just put that in the comment section. I don't even bother saying anything anymore because we've said it. We've said everything that we've needed to say, and we've put the truth out there. And it also is important to remember, once again, that the vast majority of people understand it and accept it and agree with it, over and over again. And all the surveys, like when Yale Climate Connection does surveys, 75 to 80% of Americans believe global warming is real and believe that we should be doing something about it. And so those 7 million people that were out on the streets yesterday, 1 in 50 people in the country, they were representing the majority opinion. These people like Trump that have the mic, that have outsized time and media presence to make these outrageously false statements, we're not buying it. Okay?
Yeah.
We understand, but he still gets to dominate the public airwaves, and so it creates this impression that Americans don't care about global warming, that Americans, follow him since he is our quote-unquote leader. But I think what we showed and what we're showing with these protests as they get bigger and bigger is that even though he's supposedly our leader, we are not following him.
Did you? I saw. Oh my God! I saw this thing on Facebook, which basically it was British people when Trump visited England, and their whole thing was like that Trump was a stereotypical American.
Oh yeah,
because he was all he's a ignorant loudmouth, blah blah blah. And I'm like,
right,
no,
yeah.
no. Oh, Trump,
I know.
we were not really on the verge of making a better impression, but you've destroyed all chance now.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a great time. If you were out there, feel free to call in at 877-909-1007 and tell us your experience at the protest. And once again, there were a lot of people who had never protested before. A lot of first-time people with, they're very cute.
Yeah.
They're all sort of like timid. It's like, oh, it's going to happen. You have to reassure them that, basically it's just lots of fun. So, anyway, one of the ways that we have to get to a green future, a cleaner future, that the kind of future that the people who were out yesterday were demanding, asking for, is by switching away from our chemical and intensive agriculture, which has so much danger to the environment, does so much damage, collateral damage. And the way to do that, of course, is organic farming principles. And we have a friend of the show. We're very lucky to have Kristen Buskirk, who is an organic farmer right here in Northwest Ohio. And so I wanted to have a chat with her since we're coming up. The season's just about over, so it's time. Farmers have a little time to talk now. So, Christy, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to hear from you. Um, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm enjoying some of this rain.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. Well, the drought and the rain. So how has it been trying to farm in these drought conditions for all these weeks?
So, farmers watch the weather a lot, right? So I have a very, I know all the weather from the past season. We are actually incredibly wet early in the spring, which posed a lot of problems for us getting into the fields on time. We were behind schedule. Plants get stressed when they can't get into the ground. And then we had about 9 weeks or 6 weeks at least of 90-degree temperatures that then we're finishing the season with a drought. So although it's been dry now, we actually had problems earlier with it being too wet and then hot. While I was listening to you talking about global warming, that is something that I feel like has kind of been the overarching controller of this season is just abnormal weather patterns that deeply affect your ability to get plants in and plant health. So we are actually having a pretty good finish to the season because those problems were harder. We have irrigation, so I can control when I have a drought. Much bigger farmers don't. We're of a size that I can control and I can keep my plants watered. But weather overall has been challenging this season.
Uh-huh. And I actually skipped over a little bit. Could you please tell us the name of your farm and where you're out of?
Yes, my farm is called Clay Hill. We are a certified organic farm since 2014, I think is when we got our certification. And we farm just north of Tiffin in Ohio.
Okay, great. And you do your produce at farmers markets. Is that your main outlet, or do you also sell to restaurants and things?
Yeah, so we've had a couple different outlets over the years. We farm I would say we have about 12 acres that we manage for organic crops. So we're not a super big farm. We sell to a couple other farm CSAs, like we add on to what they already do. We sell mostly direct to consumer through farmers markets. We're at the Toledo market, the Tiffin market, and the BG farmers market. And then we did for a couple years sell wholesale to the Mid-Ohio Food Bank. But of course, a lot of that stuff was all canceled with the current administration. So we have lost that as a revenue stream.
So yeah, that's the details of the problems these policies have caused. It just it's just incredible. It's reached basically into every corner of our lives in terms of literally affecting the way people live. So
Yes.
So what basically inspired you to start organic farming? What and sort of tell us the difference between an organic farmer and a quote unquote average or typical farmer.
Yeah, so I, even in high school, loved plants, always thought I'd have a big garden, lived kind of homestead style, and then was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just bump up what I do and sell it to people, which led to me working on other farms for about a decade, both in New Jersey and then here in Ohio. And just really taking a liking to it. I think you really have to like this line of work. It asks a lot of you. It's quite a lifestyle over just a job that you go to. And then we kind of look at, so I can't actually say, I don't know too many big produce farms. We have a lot of row croppers in Ohio. That's a very different type of farming. They only grow a few crops. They have very specialized equipment. They can manage large tracts of land with very few people. Produce farms require a lot of people. The produce farms around here, you'll see 50 acres of just tomatoes growing. Anytime you grow a large tract of one type of something, you are inviting in pests and problems that will escalate very quickly if not managed. So they can use sprays that we cannot use. I still do use certain types of sprays. Like we have to have tools that help us manage insects and fungal stuff, but all of those tend to be based more like a biological, like we use BT, which is a bacteria that can kill worms. It doesn't affect any other insects or humans. It just essentially starves worms, so that's a good one. Bigger farms can use more effective, or not effective, but just more longer lasting, I would say, sprays and chemicals that have residuals. So when you get a spray, it might last a little bit longer, but then also, has residual effect where it's hanging out in the ground. I wouldn't say there's many vegetables that you can spray with herbicides, but they also will use herbicides in the aisles. If you can spray it targeted. Of course, we've seen all the studies about residual herbicides showing up in people's bodies and even breast milk at this point. So we each have different tools, but I would say conventional farmers, just have chemicals and tools that they can use that I think have a longer impact and might last longer in the environment. And organic farms also do a holistic approach where they're planting cover crops and taking care of the farm holistically and trying to keep the ground covered and using cover crops to introduce nutrition back into the ground. It's just kind of, I'd say, more of that holistic approach over addressing symptoms.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned that you have some irrigation, but isn't also creating like organic matter in the soil kind of an important part of organic farming? And doesn't that give you a little bit of protection against things like drought?
Absolutely. The more organic matter you have in the soil, the better your water retention is. So if you plant those cover crops and keep the ground covered all the time and have periods where you're just turning plant matter into the ground to lift that organic matter, you are increasing soil, and farming is all about soil, right? So your crops can only be as healthy as your soil is. Modern farming, row crop farming, is very extractive. They grow a crop, they take it off, the soil sits fallow, they add chemical fertilizers and stuff, and then they do more extractive farming. A lot of organic farms have periods of rest where you're just growing crops that you turn into the ground to grow that organic matter.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about no-till farming. I mean, that's sort of presented as sort of the alternative to, quote, traditional, quote, unquote, row crop farming, but doesn't that actually require more chemicals?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I think no-till is a fine step, and I think it's just farmers used to get in after every crop and turn the soil over, and people really like that flat field with nothing on it, getting ready for planting. And I just think that idea is residual from our idea of farming that no longer serves us. Those crops have been bred to be high yielding and grow in conditions that are not favorable. I'm not sure if it uses more spray. I don't know. And I think it's a fine tool, but it is certainly not some fix all or something that solves all the problem or erases all the problems with conventional farming. It's a good step because the more you till, the more you erode that organic matter and you can lose soil. But I don't know if I can speak to it using less chemicals. Tillage does have to happen, I know, in my system at some point for sure, because we have lots of perennial weeds, thistle to name one, and that you must work down. If you do not control it, it will take over your farm. So we do have problems with weeds, whether they've just come in and are very good at what they do, or if they've been super weeds because they now resist herbicides and take over. But we do have problems on farms now that they haven't had traditionally over the years that you do have to manage. And tillage is one of those tools that we use. But I wouldn't say it needs to happen every year.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I have to admit, in my gardening, I have way too much sympathy for the weeds. It has definitely cost me some yield, but yeah. So I admire the persistence that you need to keep farming. Do you so you've been doing this for a while? Have you basically seen a pattern where the sort of extremes that we might be able to attribute to global warming, do you see those kinds of growing seasons increasing, becoming more frequent, or is it sort of stayed about the same?
I feel like every season has its challenges. And I just think you have to have resilient systems. And what helps with that is research that is typically funded by the government. So you can have places that do this work. They test what cover crops are doing. They can develop systems. Maybe they're developing seeds. Through my career, I've had dry years. I've had really wet years. We get a lot of wind here in Ohio in the spring. I've lost covers to my high tunnels. There's lots of challenges that weather poses. I can't say over over a decade, I've really noticed a pattern, but like there are problems I think are just going to get worse. And without our ability to address those, and that is something that the government has traditionally helped with, a lot of research has been put into chemical farming and developing those sorts of crops. This administration is not favorable to our type of farming. So there's going to be a lot of loss in research dollars and just trying to continue to develop equipment and systems that help support the type of farming that we do. So I do think we are going to lose an edge on understanding and developing that resiliency that we really are going to need to be able to continue producing food as, climate changes.
Uh-huh. So
it feels very overwhelming as a farmer, honestly. This season was pretty discouraging. I don't know how many seasons farmers can take where they have weather affect them in certain ways before it breaks you.
yeah, I think I've seen articles, I've seen indications that the seasons have been so bad, and now the markets for a lot of farmers have become so uncertain that it's
Yes.
kind of a 1, 2, 3, 4 punch kind of a thing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels overwhelming. Yeah, I felt pretty discouraged this year with some decisions made by the administration. Our loss of certain markets, our customers use some food assistance. There's some really great programs where our customers can get fresh food at the farmers market from local farmers that goes right to their house. It's such a good thing. Those are for vegetables. It's not just for any food that you get at the store. Those programs have been discontinued. So you're right. It starts to add up where our climate is affecting us, our ability for customers to access us is being affected. It can feel overwhelming.
Do organic farmers, do you have kind of a network? Do you talk to each other? Are there, do you maybe even cross over and talk, and connect with organic farmers from
Yes.
other countries? Or are you all pretty much on your own?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have so much interaction with people overseas. I know Europe has systems and laws that are a little bit stricter than ours about the production of some food, and have been growing, I would say, on kind of smaller scale vegetable stuff for a very long time. I have some peers that look for systems there and some equipment there, but here in Ohio, it's not, the main type of farming, and we all, at least in this area, know each other. I had a farmer get together a few weeks ago where a lot of us got together and talked about our season and toured a farm and talked about equipment and stuff. So the peer-to-peer learning is really important. There is our certifying agency, the Ohio Ecological Food and Farming Association. They're in Columbus. They have a big conference every year where you can go and learn. So yeah, there's definitely networks. I really rely on people in my community for me to call and be like, hey, I'm seeing this pest. What are you guys using? Or, and just call and talk to them. So I really rely on that.
Okay. All right. Well, that's just about all we have time for. So just one more time, if people want to get some of your produce specifically, the season's just about over, right? How much time have we got, and where can we go?
So we have the last market in BG this coming up week. That's on Wednesdays downtown from 4 to 7. And we are so lucky to have the Toledo Farmers Market downtown. That is a year-round market. My farm is there almost the entire season, maybe taking a few weeks off in the winter. And that is in downtown. It's from 8 to 1 this time of year, and then we'll go to, 8 to 2. It will move to 9 to 1 starting in December and be a little bit shorter hours in the winter, and that is enclosed.
All right. Well, thanks so much,
Okay.
Christy. Yeah, and hang in there. We all need
Thank
food,
you.
so keep growing it.
Thank you. I appreciate the support.
Okay. That was Kristen Buskirk. What did you folks think? 877-909-1007. And I am a customer of hers, but I want to assure you I don't get any break on price or anything. She doesn't toss an extra squash in my bag or anything, and it would be kind of nice if she did,
Yeah.
but no, no. What do they call that?
Kickbacks.
No kickbacks,
Yeah.
right? So, all right. Well, that was our interview with Kristen Buskirk, and now it's on to hear from our advertisers and patrons. For Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District, imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place is right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before by maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore, get outside, experience nature. Your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org, on Instagram, Facebook, or X, or call 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. And For a Green Future is also brought to you by our patrons. And our patrons are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page, and they picked a membership level that matched their own budgets. And every month a little bit comes out of their account, so it comes over to us, and painlessly. And that's how we can afford to keep this show on the air. So thank you to our patrons. Okay, Rebecca, your turn. What have we got here?
All right. Well, as of Monday, tomorrow is the beginning of the 5-day festival of Diwali, which is a festival of lights from, Hindu, Jain, couple other sort of Hindu adjacent religions that are popular in the subcontinent.
Wow, that crept up on me. That seems like a little early this year, but okay, Diwali.
Yeah, as probably all the Diwali decorations are already in stores. It's terrible. Anyway, they're not. There's no. Maybe they are somewhere. I don't know. But yeah, it comes from the word Deepavali, which deep means diya, which is a traditional Indian lamp, and avali means row. So the name of it means row of lamps. And you have some, especially in some regions or some sects, you have kind of like fancy metal-looking lamps that you can burn oil in, but mostly it's little kind of clay pinch pots, basically, or little clay pots that you put the sesame oil in and light. And so, or also, let's see, ghee or a couple of different kinds of oils. In fact, they go by in Tibet, there's something similar that goes by the name butter lamp. So I could have just as easily done ghee, which is clarified butter. But yeah, thought I'd talk a little bit about the sesame plant. The sesame oil is an oil made from the seeds of the sesame plant, whose name is sesamum, M-U-M, indicum. And it's very popular for cooking and as a paste, which is called tahini. And sesame seeds have the highest oil content of any seed. I did not know that.
Wow.
Probably it comes from somewhere in Africa and India where it has wild relatives. So, and the seeds grow in pods. So it's essentially this flower that was around, and people are like, boy, howdy, there's a lot of these seeds. What can we do with these? There's so many of them. Because they're big. They're much bigger than most flower seeds, and they're there in this nice, convenient pod where you can find them all. So, yeah, also extremely healthy sesame oil. It's got all kinds of vitamins and good stuff in it. So, and also I think it's involved in some kind of ritual bath that people take right before Diwali, oil bath, which is supposed to be, good for your skin and make you beautiful and things. So the benefits, ecologically speaking, of the sesame plant is that it supports biodiversity, I guess, because other things must be living in it or eating it or something. It improves soil health, and it's used in phytoremediation, which I found out is a process that uses plants to clean up contaminated environments by removing, degrading, or stabilizing pollutants in the soil and water. So
Mhm.
apparently it does that. That's good. Just kind of sucks the pollution right out of there in some cases. And drawbacks would be environmental degradation from chemical use, fertilizers and pesticides, deforestation and erosion. And also, you see, the deforestation and erosion when you cut down a forest to grow stuff. It leads to eutrophication, second vocabulary word, which is a process by which a water body becomes overly enriched with nutrients, which leads to excessive algae or aquatic plant growth. And then those die and they're eaten by bacteria, which also use up all the O2, all the oxygen in a particular area, creating a dead zone. So again, this fits in very well with our thing about organic farming because whenever I research the drawbacks of some kind of food crop, we get the same thing.
Uh-huh.
It puts too much chemicals and creates too much deforestation. So yada yada, we're farming wrong. It's not all these foodstuffs are bad. It's that we're not farming a good way.
Yeah, we have to farm. We gotta eat. So,
Yeah, now be like that Christie person.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
And I forgot to mention another way to comment now, because this is new. We've only done this a few weeks. Is you can text 877-909-1007. Wait, no, I'm sorry. That's the call-in number. Wow, this is still new. So you can call 877-909-1007, or you can text 419-973-5841. Either way, we'd like to hear from you. Okay, on to ecological news. And we got a mix of stories. And it's kind of our first story is mixed. This is sort of EV news. I got two electric vehicle stories. The first one, Kelly Blue Book. This story was actually way back in February. And that is study EV owners growing more satisfied. And essentially what happened was J.D. Power did a survey of 6,100 EV owners who had bought their EVs. They were models of 24 or 25 model years. And basically, they are very happy. They're happier and happier with them. They were surveyed on things like battery range, charging station availability, cost, safety, reliability. And EV owners, of which I am one, are very happy. Interestingly, the most satisfied EV owners were the top three were the Hyundai Ioniq 6. That's the number one in terms of EV satisfaction. So if you're thinking about an EV, you might want to think about that one. Number two was the Kia EV6. So interesting coincidence there. Apparently number 6 is pretty good in terms of EVs. Number 3 was the Chevy Equinox. So there you are, 1, 2, 3, Hyundai, Kia, and Chevy. 94% of EV owners now say the next car they buy will also be an EV. And in fact, only 12% would even consider going back to an internal combustion engine.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I see something positive about electric vehicles on a social media, like on Facebook, there's this torrent of people who are like, I'll never buy an EV. And so like the question is, well, so then what authority do you even have to talk about it? You've never driven one, you've never owned one, okay. But the people who have driven them and bought them and own them are very, very happy with them. And as from the result of this survey, 94% will never go back.
Electricity is witchcraft, Joe. It's bad.
Well, it kind of is.
Should never get an EV.
But, okay. But
Might
unfortunately,
be a little bit.
they are kind of spooky,
Yeah.
because they're so silent. I mean, sometimes I'm in a parking lot, there's a bunch of people talking, and I'm like cruising past them in EV mode, and they're like I get within 5 feet, they're like, car. So
Yeah.
it's a little creepy, but
You have to actually, you have to remember to not hit people.
yes, because they're not going to hear
They
you
can't
and
hear
get
you,
out of the
yeah.
way. You just have to be careful of them. So,
Yes.
but okay, we got to temper that now with some not so good EV news. A story in the Guardian on October 16th, and the title is "Plug-in hybrids pollute almost as much as petrol cars, report fines." And this is, unfortunately, it's the difference between potential and practice. Based on laboratory tests, the European Union believes, officially, the government, the EU, believes that EVs reduce carbon emissions by 80%, well, 75%, almost 80%, which is great. Unfortunately, what they did was they looked at the onboard fuel consumption meters for 800,000 EVs, or plug-in hybrids, PHEVs, and they found that roughly they actually use about 5 times as much gas as predicted from the laboratory tests, and that has actually gone up because in 2021 they did the same test and found it was about 3.5 times as much more than predicted. And the reason is that the plug-in hybrids are spending less time in EV mode than predicted. In fact, they only spend about 27%, just a little over a quarter of their time in EV mode, whereas the estimate is that they would spend 84%. And this is actually a case of practice, of driving. I mean, I have my plug-in hybrid electric van, my PHEV, the Wonder Van that I've talked about and bragged about many, many times on this show.
He's a nice little van. He's not wrong.
Yeah. But the thing is that just a little bit of difference in my driving makes a tremendous difference in my miles per gallon.
Wow.
Because like if I'm on my way here, I could get all the way here and all the way home in total EV mode, right? No gas at all. But if at any point I have to accelerate really fast, then the car goes, oh, they're driving like, sporty. They want lots of acceleration. And so then the gas engine will kick in and it'll stay on for, 10, 20 miles.
All right.
Because the van now thinks that I need the power of both the battery and the gas engine. So you have to be very careful, and you have to follow the ABC, that is, always be charging. And in order to keep the car in electric mode as much as possible. And doing that, when I'm able to do that religiously, I can get my miles per gallon up to 91 miles per gallon. So that's that ideal 80% EV time that plug-in hybrids are capable of. But if I have a situation where right now I actually can't access my charger, so I'm not charging the van up 100% every day, I have to do that. I have to go to the downtown chargers and walk half a mile back to my house. So my miles per gallon right now are at about 35 miles per gallon, which is, not bad for a big van, for a van that seats 7 people. But I know that right now I'm not meeting my plug-in hybrid EV potential. And so the problem with this is, of course, that the EU has a law that says internal combustion engine cars are actually going to be banned completely by 2035.
Wow.
And so all the European car makers are like, no, we can't get rid of our internal combustion engines. How about if we switch to the plug-in hybrids, and keep doing the gas? This study says that's probably not going to work because people do get lazy and people don't drive in EV mode as much as they could. And so hopefully this will lead to the EU sticking by their guns and saying, no, we are going to phase out EVs 100% by 2035. So,
not phase out EVs.
Or, yeah, right. Phase out internal combustion engines. Thank you.
We knew what he meant, but just in case someone didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't want that pulled out and misquoted.
No.
All right, next story. Off to ABC News, actually. And some more really bad news from the federal government. October 11th story. Republicans try to weaken 50-year-old law protecting whales, seals, and polar bears. And this is the Marine Mammal Protection Act. This was adopted in 1972. It's actually before the Endangered Species Act. It was when basically they were. It was clear that all whales, were on their way to extinction because we were just killing them left and right and destroying their habitat and doing all kinds of terrible things. So they passed the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and it has saved. It directly protects marine mammals, whales, seals, polar bears, and so it says you can't capture them, you can't kill them. So there's no polar bear hunting in the United States. And it literally saved the humpback whales from extinction. They were well on their way to...
And maybe even sea wolves. Are sea wolves covered?
Sea wolves?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're covered under...
There's
I know
like
I think they're under the Endangered Species Act.
right.
But,
There was a whole article about how sea wolves are in the process of evolving into whales, possibly. That's actually how we got whales to begin with, was something dog-like.
Uh-huh.
Started spending more and more time in the ocean.
Uh-huh. This also, the Marine Mammal Protection Act also bans the imports of marine mammal parts and pieces. So if another country has unsustainable marine mammal practices, they can't send their whale meat here. And so it's really provided global protection for marine mammals. And of course, the Republicans want to get rid of it because they just don't like animals, no matter how beloved. They're like, save the whales. Why should we save the whales?
Yeah.
Kill the whales. That's their official policy. So we'll see where it goes. It's been introduced in Congress. There's no schedule so far of hearings or anything of that nature. Of course, all the conservation groups that exist are saying that this is a terrible idea. Don't touch the Marine Mammal Protection Act. It's mostly fishing and oil because it protects mammals from oil development, incidental damage. And so, of course, they want to get rid of it. Next story, and here's some more bad news. We're approaching this story from an angle from a story that was in Beyond Nuclear on October 12th, written by a fellow named Cody Two Bears. And the title is Solar for All Should Mean Just That. And what Cody is writing about specifically is that the Trump administration has canceled this solar program for Native American tribes. There was a huge grant-funded program that combined 14 tribes in 5 states, and it gave them $100 million to put in solar energy infrastructure, and it would have directly provided power to 3,500 homes, 3,500 Native American homes. But the big thing about it is it would have trained people and given them the infrastructure to continue to have solar installations. It would have encouraged native-owned solar businesses, and it would have, because right now it turns out that tribes on reservations pay 2 to 3 times as much for electricity as people who aren't living on reservations. And the excuses are many, the fact that they live in such rural places and there's big distances between households with no, so you've got to run wires literally for miles to get to one house or whatever.
Wow.
But still, it creates a system of injustice where people who are already poor have to pay 2 to 3 times as much for a very basic commodity, which is energy. This would have saved $300 million a year for the tribal families. But so now that's the little focused in part, but pulling back, this is part of a larger problem. There were also, that was the $100 million was for the Native Americans. The total for Solar for All program was 63 grants, and that was $7 billion. And it was designed to bring low income people the benefits of solar power all over the country, every state union. And so Trump administration is also canceling that. And they're canceling the $14 billion from the National Clean Investment Fund, which that would have created banking structures that would allow people to get very low interest loans who want to put solar on their house. Okay, so there was $14 billion set aside for that, and then another $6 billion for something called the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, which would have again helped subsidize communities that wanted to do things like community solar, which is a way to have people that don't live in houses that don't have roofs to invest in solar, because you can buy into a community solar pit and get, even if you live in an apartment, and get your electricity that way. Total of $27 billion that Congress approved, and it was a bipartisan bill. Republicans, it's important to remember that Republicans voted for all these solar programs because it benefited their constituents directly. Congress approved it, and $27 billion, the Trump administration is now saying, we're just not going to do it. You know, these are contracts which are already signed. In many cases, these are projects that were actually in process, and now Trump is just saying, we're not going to do that. In other words, the big constitutional crisis here is that the executive branch, Trump, is saying that the Congress no longer has the power of the purse. That's the whole check and balance, is that the Congress is always the one that has decided where the money goes and how the money gets spent. And now the executive branch, Trump, is saying, no, you don't get to decide. I get to decide. And so even though you set aside $27 billion, we're not going to spend the money. We're just not going to do this project that Republicans and Democrats voted for. So it's terrible. It's being challenged in court by an organization called Climate United, and also the tribes that were involved in the tribal program are joining that lawsuit. So hopefully that gets beaten back and we get a semblance of sanity back again, because right now what's going on is literally just crazy. Okay, another story. This is back to talking about farmland. It's kind of interesting. BBC story of September 10th. The rewilding milestone Earth has already passed. And it turns out that farmland, we kept taking more and more farmland all the way up through the 20th century. And to now the point, roughly half the Earth's surface is farmed. Roughly 50% of all the ground is covered in farmland. But it turns out that this process actually peaked in the early 2000s. And since the early 2000s, the area that we have farming has been declining. Now, it's been increasing in some places like South America, Southeast Asia, and Africa. But faster than we're making new farmland, we're abandoning old farmland in places like North America, Europe, and Australia. And the article gives a lot of reasons for this. One is increase in productivity. Our productivity is roughly quadrupled since 1961. Instead, we only need a quarter of the land to grow the same amount of food. The wool and cotton industries have kind of collapsed because oil-based synthetics have taken over those roles, and so we don't have as many sheep or as many cotton farms. So we need less. Also, supplements like caffeine and sweeteners are increasingly synthetic, made with oil. And so again, you don't have to grow coffee and sugar beets to get your sugar and your caffeine. So all those factors are sort of combining to mean we need less farmland to grow the same amount of food. And also, our meat choices have been changing around the world. We're actually eating less beef and lamb, which take more area to grow. We're eating more chicken and pork globally. And so in EU, for example, there's 50 million less acres being used for raising farm animals because the farm animals they are raising are smaller, don't need as much land. The authors of the study also predict that lab-grown foods might increase this even more because, as small a space as you need to raise chickens these days, to just chickens still have to produce like bones and brains and things.
Yeah.
So if you just literally have a petri dish that's growing chicken flesh, you could do that in a lot smaller areas. So, and there also the trend towards vertical farming seems to be bringing us in a direction where we need less farmland. So a lot of speculation, but the interesting fact, is that we are basically abandoning farmland faster than we're creating it, and that actually has created more opportunities for wildlife because they move back in very quickly once a farm's abandoned. Okay, final story, and we're off to New York State, and we've touched on this. We've been talking about this. Holtec wants to dump 1.5 million gallons of radioactive water into the Hudson River. They were stopped by a law. I believe it's called the Save the Hudson Act, and it was a great victory for environmentalists. Basically, the Save the Hudson Act forbids any kind of radiation being dumped into the Hudson River. We reported last week that a federal judge has overturned the Save the Hudson Act, saying, "Oh no, New York, you can't protect your river. It's a federal thing. It has to do with radiation, so the federal government has to. You can't go against what the federal government says." The good news is that the Hochul administration is going to appeal. So there was a lot of speculation because Governor Hochul has drunk the radioactive Kool-Aid. She's now all in on nuclear. She's a nuclear proponent now. So people were afraid that she was just going to let this stand. But it's too big a detriment politically for her to let the Hudson get polluted with radioactive water. Interestingly, in her letter where she says she's going to sue, she reaffirms her support for nuclear power. And she also addresses a lot of people were concerned that they might reopen nukes at Indian Point because she loves nuclear so much now. But she said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this upstate. In other words, politically, the people in New York City don't want a nuclear plant right next to the city. So she's saying, no, we're going to put it in Rochester, Buffalo, and so New York City people don't have to worry about it. So it's kind of the question is how hard are they going to fight? But the good news is that they are going to fight. So, all right. Well, let's see how we doing here for time. We have time for a call or time to take a text message, but that's pretty much what we had planned for the show today. Just once again, if you haven't been to a No Kings protest yet, the next one, go to the next one because they are fun. And I've heard, I don't know if this is true, but I heard a report that there were no injuries and no problems with 7 billion people getting together and doing something at the same time. I mean, statistically, that's almost impossible.
Yeah.
You get 7 billion people together, somebody's going to get hurt. But apparently there was no violence, no injuries, even though it was one of the largest protests in U.S. history. And so, take that, Trump. Oh, and of course, his response was to post a picture of himself as a king with a crown and, sitting on a throne. And yeah, totally clueless. All right. Thank you so much for listening, folks. That's it for this week. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes